Stephen Woodford from Rationality Rules recently replied to a smear campaign against him, and I ain't gonna lie, I was hoping for something kind of like,
"Let me tell you something, you stupid little puke!"
Uh-oh!
But instead we got an apology tour.
Adequately cover my mistakes, apologise to those that I hurt. My apology, of course, goes out to the whole of the trans community. Please know that I am truly and sincerely sorry for the mistakes that I made. Mistakes happen and they're a critical component to learning as an individual and as a collective, but some mistakes are more hurtful than others. My failure to adequately cover the effects that HRT has on trans women was a pretty huge and embarrassing blunder, but my lack of sensitivity, endorsement of extremely insensitive statements, and indeed entire narrative was where I royally messed up. And so to know that my mistakes and hyperbole has likely emboldened some actual bad actors weighs heavily on me. But the weight that I feel is nothing compared to those who suffer at the hands of said bad actors. For what it's worth, I am sorry for my failure on these matters.
And I am genuinely sorry for that. And I will do my utmost best not to make this mistake again. Truly, I should have known better. For now at least, I'm done with this Essence of Drama segment. I equivocated trans women with non-trans men, and that's a huge mistake. Indeed, my views on hemoglobin were mistaken. So there's the mistakes that I made, or at least the majority of them. I'm now going to move on to Ethel's mistakes, but don't let that dampen mine. I screwed up, and I own that fact. While I reject the malice motive that some have attributed to me, I absolutely recognise that my honest mistakes caused real harm, and I am sincerely sorry for that. I know that it will never make up for the harm that I've caused, and that many of you will never consider me an ally again.
Oh, for fuck's sake, Stephen. Okay, what about when Ethel says, look, there's trans women that compete that don't win. So see, there's no advantage.
If one has an unfair advantage but loses, they still had an unfair advantage. Fairness, which is the foundation of sports and athletics, isn't about who crosses the line first. It's about ensuring that all participants spring from the same starting block. Given that in most events men outperform women by 10 to 30%, we need to show that HRT completely removes, or at least sufficiently mitigates, the athletic advantages granted by male puberty. And until we do that, we are not justified in claiming that fairness has been achieved. So now I'd like to respond to the most frequent criticism that I've received. That being that trans women have been able to compete since 2004, and yet they haven't come to dominate. Ethel and many others see this as strong evidence for trans women not having an advantage whatsoever. Yes, trans athletes have been able to compete since 2004, but up until 2015, and effectively 2016, the rules were drastically different. Until 2015, trans women had to 1. Be legally recognised as a woman, which of course was near impossible for those living in countries in which changing one's gender is illegal. 2. They had to have undergone gender reassignment surgery, which is to say they had to have removed their testicles. And 3. They had to have received appropriate hormone therapy for at least 2 years.
So basically the restrictions up to this point against trans women competing in the Olympics have basically kept them out of the competition. It's interesting how that information was withheld by Essence of Thought and Dusty Smith. It's exactly as if they're withholding information that doesn't fit their narrative.
The last objection I'm going to tackle is the most prominent study that Ethel referenced.
There is no direct and consistent research to suggest that transgender female individuals and transgender male individuals have an athletic advantage in sport, and therefore the majority of competitive sports policies are discriminatory against this population.
Indeed, this is the very study that many claim, including Dusty Smith, proves that trans women have no advantage.
Sports, medicine, trans. That's how easy this is to find. And okay, boom, the very first link that comes up, the most basic amount of research you could possibly fucking do, right? So why did he not share the most in-depth scientific study with his audience on the subject he is talking about? Instead, why did he show a Joe Rogan clip instead of sharing the science? Well, in my opinion, it's because the most in-depth study that is done on the subject goes against his narrative, and he doesn't want you to know that.
Now, I'm going to thoroughly break down all of the relevant papers, including this one, in my future video. But to briefly address it now, let's go a step further than Dusty and do
The most basic amount of
reading. First off, if you read the title, you can see that it's a systemic review of the literature relating to sport participation and competitive sport policies, which is to say, it's not a review of athletic performance, a fact that the authors make even more clear in their objective. Scrolling down, if you read the method, you'll see that of the 8 studies that it references, 6 are interviews, with most having a sample size less than 5, and only 1 study actually relates to trans athletic performance, that being Goran and Bunk. And if you read their study, you'll see that among other things, that while HRT significantly reduces muscle mass in trans women, it doesn't reduce it to anywhere near the same level as non-trans women. Anyhow, back to the systemic study, as from here things just get worse. The authors not only assert that
there is no direct and consistent research to suggest that transgender female individuals and transgender male individuals have an athletic advantage in sport,
but also that there's no direct or consistent research to suggest that they have any advantage at any stage of their transition, e.g. cross-sex hormones and gender-confirming surgery. I'll say that again. Any stage. Which is to say that if your position is that trans women should be able to compete so long as they're on HRT, then you ain't getting it from this review. But yeah, more on that to come.
So basically it's a paper that says there's no research. And what exactly are Ethel and Dusty Smith arguing for? Are they seriously arguing that there's no physical advantages of men over women? What exactly is the argument here? Because as Stephen pointed out, it just says there's no research on anything. No restrictions, no hormone replacement therapy for a year, just nothing. So it's a meaningless paper.
This topic is much more complicated than most, including my former self, are making it out to be. So please be wary of those who are still claiming that it's straightforward, because it isn't.
Not everything is complicated. Men are physically stronger than women. That is a biological fact. This is Jim Wall. Thanks for watching. Until next time.
Cisco, do we have to leave all our good friends now? Only until next time, Pancho. Adios, amigos.